Hi, I'm Lise Redfern. I'm the CEO of Arven. I hope you enjoy this video presentation we prepared for you, and I'll see you again in about 40 minutes for your questions and hopefully some answers from this end. Enjoy.
Welcome to Bergen, to Arven. My name is Lise Redfern. I'm the CEO of the company, and it's my pleasure to welcome you here to our factory and workshop today. Let's start by inviting you into our factory. This is where the magic happens. Standing in the heart of the factory, and let me just introduce you to my colleague. This is Janne Brandsøy. She is our head silversmith, and she'll be our guide for today because she knows a lot more about the silversmithing and goldsmithing than I do.
So first of all, we could show you some of this factory area. You will see the large machines in the back here. When they hit down on the maximum power, it's going to be a pressure of 260 tons. That's about 250 elephants falling down here at the same time.
That's a lot of elephants.
It's pretty loud here when all the machines are going at the same time. As you can see now, one of my colleagues is adjusting some tools, and it's all done by hand. There are no computers. It's all done by hand, the old school way, still today. We use them for production of cutlery, but also parts of candle holders, larger trophies. And I can show you the step of one spoon, how it's made. So it's all going to start with a piece of raw silver like this. But to make a spoon look like this, you need at least 7 tools. So first of all, the first tool is going to make it to a flat spoon. The next one is going to make the pattern that you want. The next step will take away the silver we don't need anymore. Next one, bend it, and so forth. So you'll see a lot of tools around here, but that's only 2 or 3% of the tools that we got. Because every single object needs 7 tools. And in this pattern, we might have 30 parts. They all have 7 tools. We produce 21 patterns at a time, at the moment now. So we have a lot of tools in the attic.
Did you do the math already?
No, I didn't
How
do
many?
the math. Didn't do the math.
So what does the tool look like?
This is one of the tools. So what we do is we have a negative shape of the tool in steel, and we're going to have the positive part on top in brass or copper. That's going to be hit down on the silver to make the pattern. The old tools were handmade by a hand engraver, so they were chiseled out and then with a small steel tool done by hand. Nowadays it's burned into the steel.
It's surprisingly heavy.
Yeah, so that's one of the smaller ones, but we have larger ones. They're 80-90 kilos heavy. Yeah. So the youngest ones are a couple of weeks old, and the oldest ones we got are about 90 to 100 years old.
And we still use them regularly,
Yeah,
don't we?
we use them still, yeah.
So because the tools, they look the same whether they were made 100 years ago or whether we made them yesterday. They still look the same and they fit into the same machines. Like some of the machines we have, this one is the oldest one, and it's actually 90 years old. So, and we use it regularly. For instance, the first step of making a baby cup or a very small sports trophy, we use that machine weekly. Because our company was founded in 1868. By Mr. Theodore Olsen. Theodore, he went abroad for his education as a silversmith, and he came home with his international education and also some international experience. And at that time, Bergen was very much the place to be when it came to silversmith and goldsmithing. There were actually more silversmiths in Bergen alone than in the rest of the country altogether. So this was the hotspot. This was the place to be if you wanted to work with silver. And he set up his business in Øvregaten, which is Norway's oldest street actually, and is located right around the corner from where we are. And he pretty soon became the superstar of the silver industry in Bergen. He was so talented, and he attracted a lot of young men at the time who wanted to learn from him, be his apprentice, and work for him. And he did. He trained a lot of young men to be very good silversmiths, and they again set up their own businesses, some of them very large and very successful in the silver industry. So, but what about the spin? What is the difference between this stage and this stage? Because they look the same, but this one is shiny and this one is all matte. Why is it like that?
After the last bending process, it's going to the grinding station.
Oh yeah, because it's still sharp, isn't it?
So the sharp corners and still filled with grease. So I'm going to take you guys to the grinding station and show you the next step.
There you can see that all the walls in all the factory are filled with these tools, and it's interesting to see just in this one pattern. This is the tools just to make a child's spoon. This is the tools just to make an eating spoon, and so forth. So there's thousands and thousands of these tools all around the factory here.
So the spoon moved from the factory to this area. So this is the grinding and polishing area. So my colleagues do everything by hand. So we use these pretty stiff hard brushes, and with a paste on it, it's going to have the same feeling like sandpaper on wood. And you're going to grind it when this spins, grind it by hand, and that's how it ends up in this color. And you need to take away all the sharp edges and corners. After that, we have to clean it and send it to the other side, and it's going to get the high finish polish. So it's all done by hand still.
Oh, interesting.
We also have a tool maker here, and I'm going to show you the tool making station. Because we have a lot of tools, and earlier days we had to ship them away to maybe Germany or Italy to get them fixed. Also all the machines, we needed to fly people in to help us out if they broke down. Now we have a colleague that works as a tool maker, so that means he maintains all the machines, he makes new tools, not as a steel engraver, so he won't cut it out in the steel by hand, but he will use a bath and burn it into the steel the modern way. But that's why we don't need to stop a production if a tool breaks down more than maybe a couple of days or a week. Earlier days it has to be stopped for months maybe.
How much does it cost to make one tool?
It depends a little on how much patterns we have in it, but in a good week you have a new tool if it's a basic tool.
It takes about a week to make one new one.
Yeah. What we do, we make a lot of cutlery in silver, but we also have a lot of cutlery where the handle is silver, but the front is in steel, like the steak knives, the Norwegian cheese cutter.
Oh, did you know that the cheese slicer is a Norwegian invention? It really is. We're very proud of it.
So,
another fun fact, sorry to interrupt. Did you know that the paperclip is a Norwegian invention? What would you do without it?
That's true, that's true.
Back to knives.
So from the factory where we just at, we make halves of the handle. We solder them together and fill them up, and we put our steel knives or cheese cutter into it. So that's why the only products, the knives that are silver all through, is the fish knives, because you want your fish to be that soft that you don't need a steak knife. So here are some of the different patterns we got. So you're gonna find shafts in every single form and shape. So I don't know if we're going to take you guys to the goldsmiths.
Yeah, we'll go to the goldsmith. But I'd just like to ask you, because sometimes I get the question from a guest, if I wanted to have my own silver pattern made, like designed for me, and I want my own family pattern to be unique for me, is that realistic? Can you do that?
We can do it, but it's gonna cost, because you have to draw it, you have to make the tools, and if you want to be the only one that's gonna have it and own it, you have to pay for the tool making, but also for adjustments every time we adjust the tool to make a new knife or fork. So if you adjust, one of the tools takes maybe 1 to 2 hours, just for one step, 1 to 2 hours for the next step. And if it's 7 steps just for the spoon, and you want the knife and the fork,
I know.
So if you pay for it, we're happy to help and make one.
So you're talking maybe like $100,000.
Yeah.
So, but it's doable. Yes, be our guest. We'll be happy to do it.
No problem.
So move on to the goldsmith.
Yeah, and on the way you're going to see some smaller tools on the walls. That's for medals. We produce a lot of medals for soccer teams, handball, marching bands. Not so much of the American sports, not so much baseball and hockey. But yeah, we're able to produce that too if somebody wants it.
It's come to my attention that why there were so many silversmiths in Bergen, and it actually dates back to, or it goes back to the fact that Bergen or Norway didn't have banks until very, very late in the 19th century actually. Italy, for instance, had banks already in the 12th century. So silver was very much the metal to preserve your wealth. And it was the method of payment for a very long time in Norway and Bergen. And a lot of silver came to Bergen, obviously, because Bergen was the main city in Norway, with all the Hanseatic trade going on. So a lot of silver landed in Bergen and was kept in Bergen. And with the Hanseatic tradesmen as well, some of them were very rich and powerful, and they bought a lot of silver also to exhibit their wealth. So they bought silver art pieces in addition to the silver as a means of payment or restoring or keeping their wealth. So that obviously attracted a lot of silversmiths to Bergen, because there was a lot of demand for silver art pieces and silver jewelry and silver cutlery. So this was, very much the place where it all happened. They've disappeared.
So the goldsmithing area. You're going to see a lot of empty seats. Well, we have only 2 goldsmiths working in this area.
Normally not this empty.
Not this empty. But we have 2 people working here in the goldsmith area, but they move around on the different stations, because they have one for production repair, one for stone setting, one for engraving, for pearls, and so on. And they also have a small polishing and grinding area. So what they do is they repair for walk-in customers, but also customers from all over Norway and other countries. And they do special made stuff, custom made stuff, but also old productions and new productions. We have a lot of molds from stuff we made 80 years ago, and we still are able to produce it today.
And that's actually an interesting story, because we have those molds and those drawings, because one of the companies that is a part of Arven is historically Scandinavia's largest goldsmith company. It used to be 250 goldsmiths seated in one building in the center of Bergen, just making and designing gold jewelry and setting diamonds and gemstones. So obviously when we took over that company, acquired it, we got all the drawings and all the molds to make all the models that they had. So that's part of what we try to do as well, is to revigorate a little bit the old things, but maybe with a little bit of a modern twist. This here is an example of that. These were traditionally made with big white pearls. But we thought, hey, why don't we jazz them up a little bit and put some colorful gemstones in them? And now all of a sudden the whole collection looks a little bit like candy. So we call it bonbon, like the French for candy. But explain us a little bit how it's made.
If it was going to be one of a kind, it might be handmade from scratch. But if we're going to mass produce it, we have to make it easier for ourselves. So we have a small foundry upstairs. So what happens is one of my colleagues are going to make the first one in wax, hand carved. It's going to be put on, it looks like a Christmas tree in wax. And after that happens, you're going to put a steel cylinder around it, like that. Pour plaster onto it. When the plaster hardens, it can take a lot of heat. So when you heat it up, the wax is going to melt and you're going to have this hollow shape inside. And then afterwards, you put the plaster into water and it's going to dissolve. So you have this hollow space inside, and pretend it's in there. You're going to melt silver or gold, pour it in, and with the right temperature in the vacuum, it's going to get sucked into the hollow shape. So when the plaster is dissolved later on, you're going to have this one, but in gold or in silver. And you're able to saw off the branches, and you have an almost half-finished product. So that's how we are able to mass produce stuff. And we have a lot of molds, so we could mass produce our wax models. But the first one is always made by hand.
That's quite fantastic, isn't it? To be hand carve a wax model like this. That is actually carved after a hand drawing, isn't it?
Yeah.
A pencil drawing, inspired by the Norwegian flowers, wildflowers, and then made into a heart. It's a tremendous piece of work.
So we also have a silversmiths here. So if we get a part from the factory for a candle holder or a larger trophy, we need to go to the silversmiths to solder it together. So I'll show you that.
Just while we walk along here, can you explain what is the difference between a silversmith and a goldsmith?
So the easiest explanation is silversmiths work, produce and repair objects, larger objects. Also the name corpus means body. So we are silversmiths, but also silver corpus workers. Goldsmiths repair and produce jewelry. So we can both work in gold, silver, any metal, but silversmiths objects, goldsmiths jewelry. That's the main difference.
So you do the same thing, just with larger scale. Yeah. Larger flames.
Yeah.
Larger bangs.
Yeah.
Larger pieces of metal. Yes.
So
larger molds.
Larger molds. So the machine I told you about with a 260-ton pressure. This is one of the old tools going into that one.
That is amazing.
So this is also one of the older tools. It's hand carved by a steel engraver. So what happened 90 years ago, he used a steel tool named a stikkel in Norwegian, and he just by hand, day in and day out, carved steel on steel to make this Viking ship. We only have one. We don't have a left and a right side, but we don't need to because it's so perfectly carved that we can use it for both sides. So what happens is, if you have a mold like this for a Viking ship, you will put a piece of silver on top. You are going to take your positive ship in copper or brass, put it into the larger machine, and it's going to smack down once. When that happens, you are going to end up with a half a Viking ship with a little more silver around it that we saw away. That's going to be sent back to be refined. And we solder it together. So if you have a small ship or a larger ship,
it's the same process?
Same process. And we do the old school way with the hammer work, make the sails, use silver thread and twist it to make all the final works on the ship. And we do then gold coating inside. So we're also able to silver coat, gold coat, engrave larger objects also. So if we don't get the parts from the factory, or we don't make them ourselves the old school way with the hammering, we'll get it from the silver spinner.
Where's that? That's over here, isn't it?
Yeah. So some people might have seen machines almost like this for woodwork, but this is a silver spinning machine. So what happens here is one of my colleagues, he's able to reproduce all the shapes and forms you see in the back here in silver. So what he would do is, the older machine you talked about in the factory, that makes the start of the baby cups and stuff.
Yep.
It also makes the start of the smaller trophies. So what he does is he's going to find a tool that looks like this shape. So put the tool in the machine, the silver on top, and when this starts spinning, he's going to use one of his hand tools, and only with his body and his weight, he's going to shape the silver along the steel tool.
That is amazing to watch. You can literally see the silver changing shape in front of your eyes. And you as guests are invited in here to see this happen. You'll be standing on the other side of the glass wall here, but very, very close. And you will see the silver actually changing shape and becoming something beautiful before your eyes.
So you see the older tools here are in wood. Then we have the newer ones in steel and plastic. But all of these ones are usable still. And my colleague, he has done this for 30 years. He knows how to make all these shapes and forms. Me and 2 other colleagues, we have learned a little. And for 3 or 4 years now, we have tried to help him out. So we know how to make this whole shelf.
All of these?
All of these.
But he can make all of those?
Yeah. So, yeah, you need a degree and you need some years to learn this type of work.
You got a way to go.
Yeah.
Yeah. I cannot make any, so I'm not even an apprentice yet.
So, like the goldsmiths, we do repairs and production. So you can see what my colleagues are doing over here. So one of my colleagues here, he's making this
A bowl,
and they're often used for companies that give presents after 25 years of work, but also to have at home, to have candy, chocolate, fruit.
Popular wedding presents as
wedding
well.
present,
Yeah. Or for a large occasion, because they're quite costly these days, and I'm sure you can appreciate it when you see all the hand work that goes into just making one of them.
Yeah. So you see around here, there are large trophies, coffee pots. We make candle holders. So everything is soldered by hand from the parts that we get from the factory. And we produce a lot of metals. So my other colleague here, he is making metals day in and day out almost. So he does it from scratch, sawing and filing every single metal. He also do the gold platings, and he does the engravings. So right now he's making small Viking ships like this.
Do they go on a metal?
Yeah. So he's sawing every single Viking ship out. He gold plates them and he solder them on metals afterwards.
Fadi is the master of making medals in this country.
So
Aren't you, Fadi?
So you're gonna see some of the finished medals here before they are gold plated.
Do you need any help?
So I think that's about it, what I could tell you.
So how long does it take to train as a goldsmith or silversmith?
Normally, most of the people here, they came into the company when they were 16 and started out, and it takes a couple
As apprentices?
Yeah, apprentices. So maybe 3-4 years apprenticeship. And nowadays you could go to goldsmith school for 2, maybe 2.5 years, and then apprenticeship for 1.5 year. But there's nothing that's better or worse in those 2. So if you come directly here, we can shape and form you like we want. But if you have some experience with metal and drawing and math from school, that's also a positive thing. Yeah. But a silversmith, a goldsmith, a silver spinner, it's all different educations. So they all take 2-3 years each to learn the basics.
I think actually the Am I correct? The silver spinner told me that it took him 8 years from when he first started to try and make the silver trophies to actually make a large one without any flaws, without making holes in it or dents in it or ripping it or just doing something that wasn't right. And then it's a mess and you need to start again.
So it's almost like getting your driver's license. You're not a perfect driver even if you get your driver's license, but you are able to start driving alone.
You have a license to start driving.
So here's also after a couple of years you have a license to try out and do it yourself. So yeah. And we also have, you'll see a lot of silver in the back here because we have this new project, Arven Vintage. So you can tell about?
I can. We actually started last year. Well, we have done for quite a while in buying old gold and silver from our customers. If there's something that you just don't want anymore, you have too much of it, or it's broken, or you really don't think it's fashionable anymore, your gold jewelry, then we offer to buy it off our customers. But as you've seen, the process that we go through when you make gold jewelry or silver eating pieces is so time consuming and there's so much work going into it. So it's heartbreaking to just send it straight to recycling, to get it back as fresh silver sheets or gold grains and start working with it again. So what we've started doing is actually quality checking, doing minor repairs and professionally polishing all these items that we get. So we offer them for resale as pre-owned items to our customers, and it's become very, very popular. It's a true circular economy what we're doing here, and people really have got a large interest in those products. And of course it does help that the price points will be a lot more favorable than if you compare it to new items. They can be like 50, 60, 70% less than if you compare it to a new item. So we have a large selection of that in the store, and I'll show it to you in just a minute.
And I think people are used to buying second-hand clothing and second-hand other objects.
Yeah.
But silver don't wear out, and silver is bacterial. So I mean, you could use it, and most silver that comes in has been used only from one family, maybe handed down one generation. So yeah, some of it looks brand new when it comes in. So we only need to check it, clean it, polish it, and it's good to go.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And that is the beauty of both gold and silver, that it can almost always be repaired and fixed. So it's like an eternal metal. And when it really can't be fixed anymore, then it goes to recycling. So 90% of all the gold and silver that we use here in this factory is actually recycled. So there's very little fresh mining going on of gold and silver, even in the world today, luckily. So we'll leave the mines alone. A lot of people, a lot of our Viking guests think it's surprising when they come here and visit us, because they not only get to hear about Bergen as a silver city and Arven as a company, but they also get to go inside our factory and our workshop. They get to meet our very skilled workers, our silversmiths, goldsmiths. They get to see all the machines, all the tools, all the materials, and all the processes are explained. It's quite an interactive and quite a dynamic experience for most people. So that was the factory and the workshop. Oh, here's my friend. This is Mr. Theodor Olsen himself, the founder of the company. I'd like to think he was a little bit taller, but it's a good patting height, so we like to keep him here next to the lift. So let's have a look around the shop area. So these are examples of all the Arven vintage pieces that we have bought from our customers, and we have polished them and rinsed them and offer them now for resale. So some of them you can't even see that they have been used. I mean, they're so professionally and well polished that you'd be easily fooled. So, and why wouldn't you buy them pre-owned if you could? Because they're going to go into your own collection of silver anyway, and the pieces that you have already been used for a meal or two, so they already have some marks on them. So this has become very, very popular with our customers. I'd just like to tell you also about the patterns that we have. You can see them here on the wall. We have 21 different patterns that are ours, different designs, and they all have a distinct designer behind them, a story behind the design. Let me just show a couple of them. We have this one here, for instance, which is called Elveseter, and it's from a farm in the middle of Norway, the Elveseter farm. A huge, big, rich farm, and the owner of the farm, Rasmus Elveseter, he copied the wood carvings around his doorways in the farm and made it into a silver pattern. So this is what you see here. It's a truly Norwegian pattern. It's quite large and chunky, so we normally use it most for serving pieces. You wouldn't have this as a little teaspoon. That would be a little bit too much. Different story is this pattern here, the rose pattern. It was actually designed and given as the Norwegian people's gift to the Norwegian new king, King Haakon, when he was crowned in 1906. If you see at the top here, it's got a gold plated area and it's got the king's monogram right in the top there. So we're quite happy and quite pleased that this is the royal silver cutlery that they still use in the palace today. And it's for sale, so anybody can buy it still. So obviously also we have a large selection of silver for children, and silver for children has a very long history in Norway. And that is because not only is it a valuable gift to give to a baby when it's born, but it's also antibacterial. So it's actually the best thing to feed babies with. So that is why it's very popular in Norway still to give silver as a gift for a christening or when a baby is born. And we have various patterns, and you can have engraved in this item, for instance, when the baby was born, when it's christened, the length and the weight, obviously the name, and maybe loving message from grandmother or the godparents. So very popular. So we also have a selection of jewelry that is inspired by the Norwegian nature. So this here is a collection inspired by the Norwegian glaciers. It's called Ice. And we also have a collection here which is called Wood, which is inspired by the Norwegian trees and the woods, of course. This here is the coin, the Bergen coin that I told you about earlier. It is an exact replica of the original coin that was found during an excavation at the Hanseatic houses in the 1950s. It dates back to 1512, and we have it both in gold and in silver in different colors. We also have a large selection of gold and diamond jewelry. Of course, every lady's favorite. Who doesn't like that? Obviously some wedding bands. They're also handmade here in our workshop. They're inspired by Bergen, so they're called bubbles from the Bergen rain. They're called cobblestones from our streets. So one is called mountains, from the 7 mountains that are surrounding Bergen. This here is a different collection. It's a collection made with some young Bergen designers who didn't previously work with gold or silver at all, but they were so intrigued by our workshop and asked if they could have a collaboration with us. So this is the result of that, and some pretty unique pieces like rings that don't close at the top. You have the stone coming up on either side of your finger. Maybe that was a little bit much, together with the blue stone. Coming over to my favorite collection, which is the Bonbon collection. These were originally made with white pearls, but we adjusted them up a little bit and swapped it for colorful gemstones, and this is now the result. It looks a little bit like candy, don't you think? Over here we also have a selection of some more traditional items. If you're interested in the Viking history of Norway, we have some Viking jewelry, whether it's brooches or necklaces. We have one here that is the Thor's hammer. We have another design which is inspired by the Norwegian Viking shields. You can probably recognize them from the shields that the Vikings held in front of them when they went to battle. And a lot of small charms that you can put on as a pendant, as a necklace, or on your bracelet. So this is the little working table where you're invited to make your own silver pendant when you are here on the tour. And what you do is you hammer these initials into your own little silver pendant. And you can choose 1, 2, or 3 letters maybe. And it's quite good fun. So you get to sit down and practice a little bit. And hopefully not bang your fingers. So when you feel confident enough, then you can go onto the silver and you can make your own little pendant. Here's my name. Just by chance, I picked up the one with my name on it. Here are some of the vintage pieces, the gold jewelry that we have bought from our customers and offer it for resale. Professionally cleaned, repaired and polished. Some very unique items that you wouldn't find the same anywhere else. I just wanted to also show you the ribbons that we use for the 17th of May in Norway. The 17th of May is a very special day. It's Norway's national holiday. It's like America's 4th of July. But we celebrate it big time and quite formally. So if you do own a national costume that day, you can be sure that your mother is going to make you wear it. Whether you're 2 years old or you're 50, she's going to put you into that national costume and you will wear it that day. You have a couple of examples here of them. Whether it's cold or hot or rainy or sunny, you will be wearing it. And obviously on that day, you do also wear your national ribbon, which is a red, white and blue silk ribbon. Almost like the American flag, but the Norwegian flag happens to have the same colors. And at the top we have a silver medallion, which can be different designs, and you can even have your own name engraved on it. So you wear that quite proudly on the 17th of May. One of the things that we are very proud of in Norway is the cheese slicer. It is actually a Norwegian invention. Do you have one at home? I hope so. If not, it's a very useful tool. And you need at least one in your house. This one here is an example from a pattern that's called Anitra. Anitra was the female main character in the play Per Gynt, which was written by Ibsen, that you might know. So one of the very popular designs that we have at Arven. Another thing is that 2 weeks ago, we actually received a Design Classics prize for this design here. It's called the Lily design. It's very simple, decorative, and it was designed over 80 years ago. So it just shows you that if you have a good design, it will survive through the times. And that is actually our best-selling design today. Another design that people think looks very modern and sleek and think is very Scandinavian and simple is this one up here. This is actually, believe it or not, as old as the Eiffel Tower. It was designed for the World Exhibition in Paris in 1937. That's why it's called the Parisian, and it's still very popular with young people. It's obviously designs, they vary in popularity through the times. Some of the designs we have are over 100 years old. Some are much more modern, but inevitably they will vary in popularity over the time. And like the rose pattern is still very modern. That was designed and given to the Norwegian king, as mentioned in 1906 for his coronation. We do also have patterns over here inspired by Norwegian wood carvings. Then you have something that is very 60s. These patterns here, for instance, Facette and Åre and Sylvia and Sonia, they look much more 60s. I'm sure you can recognize it. but they're still coming back in popularity, and the young people today, they really appreciate the retro feel of those patterns. So that's something that they will go for. So the company currently employs around 20 people. There's 40 workers in the factory and in the workshop, and then there's administration, sales, and finance as well. We are not a very large company, but we are the only remaining manufacturer in Bergen. So through the times there has been very, very large silver and gold manufacturers in Bergen. Silversmithing and goldsmithing has always been a very typical Bergen trade. But it's been going down through the times, so that is why Arven has a very important mission as well, to preserve those old crafts and visualize them and show them to people and demonstrate them. So literally what you see here today is an extract of Bergen's silversmithing history and goldsmithing history. Not very many, but they are very good at what they're doing. Several of the workers that we have here in the factory and in the workshop have been here since the age of 16, since they could leave school. They started working in a workshop or in a factory making silver or gold objects. For most of the work that we do here, there's no education. If you take away the goldsmiths and the silversmiths, there's no actual education for working in our factory or in our workshop if you're not of those trades. So it takes years and years and years of actually practical training here in our premises to be able to do those jobs. And actually, my colleague over here, just inside this window, he is the only person in Norway who can make the large silver objects. He can make the coffee pots, he can make the bowls, he can make the Viking ships, and nobody else can do it. So it's quite a valuable co-worker for us. And obviously now he's making something that's tiny. Isn't that just typical? And over here, Janne, as you met, she's very modest on her own behalf, but she is actually one of Norway's most skilled and talented silversmiths. She's heading up our department here, and she's so skilled actually that she's one of the very few people in Norway who is allowed to touch church silver. Church silver is normally very large, very valuable objects. It can be huge candle holders or the bowls where you do your christening, your baptisms, and if they get a dent, if they break, you don't want to give it to just anybody on the corner to fix it. So Janne is probably the one who's going to end up fixing it for us. We hope you've enjoyed this behind the scenes tour of Arven, and we look forward to welcoming you to Bergen very soon.
So first question tonight comes from Stephen. He's in the United States, and he says, what's the most popular miniature silver or gold item?
The most popular miniature silver or gold item, well, without doubt, it's the coin that I was talking about in the presentation. It's the Bergen coin, and it's a very iconic pendant. It's actually a copy of an original coin that was found during an excavation in the 1950s, and it dates back to 1512, where you make it both in gold and silver. So it's, yeah, unquestionably the product that a lot of people go for if they want to have a memory for Bergen or buy a present and take home for somebody.
Fantastic, thank you, Lise. Question here from Rosa. She's in Littleton in the United States, and she says, generally, what is the difference in value between items made from gold and silver?
Ooh, well, that's hard to answer in general terms, but silver obviously has a lower cost. The raw material has a much lower cost than the gold as a raw material. But an item made out of gold and silver is not only the raw material, it's also the working costs that go into it. So there's hours and hours of work going into the product as well. But in general, you can say, like, use this coin, for instance, again. If you buy it in silver, it will be around $100. If you buy it in gold, it will be around $500 or $600. So that's the general difference, if that can make sense.
That's very interesting. Thank you. We have Isaac here in the United States, and he says, I was interested to hear about the historically high concentration of silversmiths in Bergen. Are there many other companies apart from Arven who are still operating? So in other words, is there much competition in Bergen for silver and gold items?
No, when it comes to gold and silver manufacturing, we're the only company in Bergen, and we're one of 2 silver manufacturers in Norway, well, like large ones, like factory scale. But obviously there are individual goldsmiths doing their own thing in their own little businesses, but we are by far the largest company in Bergen. So we are the result of a lot of companies that have been going through the stages in Bergen when it comes to the goldsmithing and silversmithing. So we are a merger and the result of maybe 10 different companies through the ages. We've been going for 154 years, and there's been acquisitions and mergers, and so we literally are the largest one in Bergen. So there's not much competition when it comes to silver production, at least, but a little bit obviously when it comes to making gold jewelry.
Wonderful. Thank you, Lise. We have Murray here in Calabasas, and he says, historically, was the silver used by Arven mined within Norway, or was it all brought into the city by the Hanseatic traders?
Interesting question, because there is a silver mine in Norway, right in the middle of Norway, and there's still silver in it, but it's not active because we don't need it. But historically, it has been mined in that mine. It's called Kongsberg. So some silver did come from there. Some has come from abroad. But today, 90% of what we use is recycled. So there's very, very little fresh mining going on in the world. But I'm sure a lot of it came with the Hanseatic tradesmen as well, simply because silver was used as payment in those days.
Perfect. Thank you, Lise. A question here now from Estelle. She's in New Orleans, and she says, how many of the different items, such as cutlery and jewelry, does the factory produce each year?
Good question, and I don't have an answer. Thousands. I couldn't give you a number. We do have a wide assortment. We have 21 different designs of cutlery. Within each design, there's between 30 and 40 different pieces, knives, forks, serving pieces, jewelry, large assortments. So I'm sorry, I couldn't give you a number. Sorry.
No problem. Thank you, Lise. Next question here is from Richard in Parkland in the United States, and he says, do you have any tips for the best way to care for silver items when you take them home?
Yes. Great question. The best tip is use it very often and wash it in the dishwasher. Then it will remain nice and shiny and you won't have to polish it so often. So what a lot of people do with silver is they're so scared of using it because they don't want to damage it or break it. So they wrap it away and store it. So when they do take it out for Thanksgiving coming up soon, and it becomes a chore and a big job because it maybe has tarnished since last year. So that's not what we recommend. We recommend use it very, very often and just wash it in the dishwasher. So the only thing is be a little bit careful is if you have very old knives that you've inherited it from generations back, because as you saw in the video presentation, the shafts, the handles of knives are hollow. And if they are very old, they could be filled with something that would react to the hot water in the dishwasher. And then they might break, obviously. So, but other than that, use it often, cleaner than dishwasher.
Wonderful. Thank you. We have a question here from Ivy. She's in Pennsylvania, and she says, I love the cheese cutter. I'll have to get one. She says, are there any other unusual items like this that Arven produces?
We do have some very unusual items. There's a butter fork, there's a food shovel, there's a tomato spade, sardine forks, lobster forks. There's lots of interesting pieces that you can see them if you go onto our website and go through the different designs for cutlery. You'll see some interesting pieces. I didn't even know that you needed all those pieces until I joined the company. But the cheese slicer is very, very useful. Should definitely get one.
Brilliant, thank you. We have Tanya now. She's in Basking Ridge in the United States, and she says, I love that your jewellery designs are drawn from Norway's history and nature. How often do you create new collections, and how do you decide on new patterns and styles?
Well, that varies because some of the designs that we have are from our own history. Like I explained in the presentation, we inherited all these designs from the company that we acquired. At the same time, we do have very skilled goldsmiths that design new pieces for us quite regularly. So we just set them into production when we have a collection that we feel is good and will fit the market. Also, we have had external designers that have cooperated with our goldsmiths and created some quite unusual pieces and very different looks. So that varies how we launch new products and how they are designed. That can come from different people.
Perfect, thank you. We've got Bo here in Sandy Springs, and she says, wow, the hand-carved wax model is incredible. How long can it take to learn to create one of those? And what happens if the artist is not happy with the model that they created?
Well, I'm sure you can recognize that these people, the goldsmiths, are true artists when it comes to their creativity and how they can actually use their hands and hand carve these wax models. It can take them days, hours, days to carve them once they've decided on the design. And if they're not happy with it, well, guess what? You just have to start again. There's only one solution. So, but they are very skilled, and they normally do a very good job and succeed with what they're doing.
Excellent, thank you. Stephen in the United States asks, what steps do you take within the factory to consolidate excess little amounts of silver, perhaps if it's fallen on the floor?
Well, obviously, we do have some very valuable scraps and dust going around in the factory and in the workshop. So we do actually collect everything. So there's vacuuming, there's always extra trays underneath your work table that collects whatever might fall down from your workbench. Underneath the goldsmith tables, there's actually a vacuum as well. So when they do filing of gold, for instance, the vacuum will suck up the dust. And then once a year, maybe, the vacuum bag is then sent for burning, and the dust that's left is actually gold and silver. So we do collect everything. Yeah.
Brilliant, thank you. Brian in Tulsa says, I heard it mentioned that it can take a week to make a new tool. How often do the tools typically break?
That varies as well. They don't very often break, but they wear down, and sometimes they get a little crack or a little grain of sand or something that goes into it. So they need to be maintained and fixed a little bit. So, but they don't very often break, I think. I couldn't give you an exact number of that either, but I would guess a few times a year we make new tools from scratch, like maybe, I'm guessing the tool maker, maybe he makes a new one once or twice a month. But take into account that we do have thousands and thousands, so he maintains them very well to prevent them from actually breaking and cracking.
Perfect, thank you. And a question here from Sharon. She's in Long Beach in the United States, and she says, how many hours does it take one of the craftspeople to create a full cutlery set?
God, there are some impossible questions here. It really, it takes a long time. The designs that we have with 30, 40 pieces in one collection of cutlery has normally been designed like 50, 60, 80, 100 years ago. And at that time, you had designers who sat down and they hand drew them with pencil and paper until they were happy. And then they started making the prototypes, and then you have to make the tools. Every single teaspoon, every single fork has at least 7 or 8 tools. So it takes years before you have the finished set and can start producing a new series of cutlery. So today we don't do that anymore. It's just too costly. The volume, the turnover of the silver cutlery of a new pattern simply couldn't carry that cost. So we use the old ones. So, but it was a big job when they once did it. I'm sure you can appreciate that.
Excellent, thank you, Lise. A question here from Sarah in the United States, and she asks, what is the difference between silver plated and sterling silver, and why would you choose to use one versus the other for different products?
Sterling silver means that it's silver all the way through, so it's solid silver. If something is silver plated, it can be a different metal on the inside, and then it's just got a layer of silver on the outside. So it's a much cheaper version versus the solid silver that is much more costly when it comes to producing it. You wouldn't use it any differently. You would use it as your eating tools, whether it's silver plated or sterling silver. It's just a matter of the cost, really. Some nations use sterling silver a lot more. Some nations are more familiar with silver plated. That varies from country to country as well. But it can be just as beautiful. And I urge you to use, if you do have silver plated cutlery, I urge you to use that just as much as if you have sterling silver, obviously.
Wonderful, thank you. And then Miki in Montclair in the United States asks, do you put a special stamp on to show when it's sterling silver or when it's plated? So how can you tell the difference between the items?
Yes, when it is sterling silver, it is stamped with the silver content. So if you look at the back of a fork or a spoon, it will say 830S on our products, and a lot of other European manufacturers use the same stamps. And that means that it's 83% pure silver in the alloy, and then 17% of the alloy is something else, some other metals that we mix with it to make it harder and sturdier. So it won't bend or break when you use it. For instance, if you're eating very hard ice cream, then you don't want the spoon to bend when you push into it. So, but you can always see the silver content on the back of the cutlery, unless some manufacturers in the olden days probably didn't use the same stamps, but today definitely the products are stamped. Some products might be stamped with 925S, meaning it's a higher content of pure silver, 92.5% pure silver. It means that it's purer, but it also means that it's softer. So normally then you would have to make cutlery or eating pieces that are a little bit thicker, so that they can withstand the wear and tear when you eat hard ice cream or a steak that isn't particularly good quality and it's a little bit tough to put your fork into. Then Yeah, so both 830 and 925S will indicate that this is pure silver. It's sterling silver.
That's really interesting. Thank you. A question here now from Jessica in the United States, and she asks, do you know if traditional Celtic metalwork was influenced by the early Norwegian silversmithing, or perhaps vice versa?
Was that Celtic, you said?
Yes.
I don't know the 100% answer to that, but I know that that the Celtic tradition and the Viking tradition, they're pretty closely linked, aren't they? There's a lot of similarities, and there was a lot of connection between the two cultures. So it wouldn't surprise me if there is a large influence both ways, actually.
Excellent, thank you.
I'll have to read up on that one before I can answer that.
And Eleanor in the United States asks, do you make the brooches that are worn with the traditional Norwegian outfits, the bunads?
No, we don't actually. That's a particular style of production. We do have some of them in our shop for resale, but they are made in a different way. So we don't make them in our factory. We make some pieces like for the belts, for instance, but not the traditional pieces for the bunad as such.
Perfect, thank you. Jane in Fruitville in the United States asks, can we come in and visit the shop on our own if we're not doing the full tour?
Yes, we welcome everybody into our shop, and everybody's welcome, and that's why we do have those glass walls going from the ceiling to the floor, so everybody can come in and they can watch the factory and my colleagues work through the glass walls. And hopefully we do have time to talk to you and give you more information as you come in as well. So please do come in.
Excellent, thank you. And Edmund asks, can Arven products be purchased online and shipped to the United States?
Absolutely. We do have an online shop, website in English, so you're very welcome to visit that. It's arven.com or arven.no, and then you click the English button. I'm not sure, I don't quite remember, but absolutely. We ship to the States every week.
Fantastic. And Barbara in Jacksonville asks, does Arven sell the Bergen coin on the Viking ships?
No, we don't actually. We would love to, but not yet. So you'll have to come and visit us or go online to the web shop.
Fantastic, thank you. And I think this is the last question we've probably got time for tonight. This one is from Ophelia. She's in San Mateo in the United States. And she asks, do you have a personal favourite item from the collection?
Well, guess what? I have two. I have the Bergen coin and I have my ring with the blue stone. I love my ring with the blue stone. So yes, those are my favourites.
Wonderful. Thank you ever so much for your time tonight, Lise, and for answering so many of those questions.
Thank you all for watching, and I hope you were inspired and maybe you'll come visit us if you ever come to Bergen. You're very welcome.